In a world where hotel staff fade into the background, one woman's voice, spoken in fluent Dutch, shook the silence. This isn't a fairy tale about being discovered. It's about what happens when the system finally looks up and sees who's been standing there all along. New York City didn't stop for anyone. Not the clanging of the subway under Lexington. Not the flood of black Escalades rolling through Fifth Avenue. And certainly not for Zoe Johnson, who scrubbed marble tiles at the Grand Plaza Hotel every morning before 7 a.m. At 29, Zoe had long ago accepted that her name wouldn't be stitched onto an office door or echoed in meeting rooms. Not in this life. Not now. Her name badge read, Zoe J. Housekeeping. She wore it over a perfectly pressed uniform, her hair tucked under a neat black wrap. She moved like a shadow, smooth and quiet, making entire messes disappear before guests even noticed they had occurred. She didn't mind the silence. She owned the silence. 6 years earlier, Zoe had stood on a Georgetown stage in a blue honor stole, shaking hands with the Dean of Linguistics. Her thesis on regional dialect shifts in colonial languages had won her a scholarship to Amsterdam University for graduate work. Her dream was to become a cultural interpreter, bridge building in divided places. Then her mother got sick, the kind of sick that came with hospital bills, missed rent, and a slow, suffocating kind of fear. Zoe moved back home, took shifts at diners, lost the scholarship, then the apartment, then her mom. Grief didn't end in screaming or tears for Zoe. It ended in silence, in making herself useful, in never asking for anything she couldn't earn with her own hands. That morning at the Grand Plaza, she was buffing the lobby floors when the front desk's landline rang sharply across the marble. The concierge was gone, late again. She looked around. No one was in sight. 1 ring, 2, 3. She walked over and picked up the receiver. Grand Plaza Hotel, good morning, she said. A man answered in rapid Dutch, clearly irritated, asking for Professor Lammers and why the arrangements for the symposium hadn't been confirmed. Zoe blinked. It took her half a second. And then she responded, in fluent, unbroken Dutch. Her voice was crisp, calm, apologetic, yet professional. She pulled a notepad from the desk and jotted down the information, spelling out names and titles with perfect pronunciation. Yes, Meneer. I'll confirm that with the coordinator. I understand the urgency. And thank you. Yes, I did study in Leiden, a while ago. She ended the call with a soft tot ziens and hung up. Then she felt it, a gaze, from behind. She turned, slowly. Richard Coleman, owner of the Grand Plaza Hotel, a man who rarely appeared before noon, stood 5 feet away, watching her as if she'd just materialized out of thin air. He didn't speak at first. Zoe's throat tightened. He knew her face, not because he ever looked at the staff, but because he never looked at the staff. And now she was the only one in the room. I didn't know our housekeeping team spoke Dutch, he said, voice slow, cautious. Zoe straightened her shoulders. I apologize, Mr. Coleman. The call wasn't mine. The concierge wasn't present and... He lifted a hand, as if to stop her. But before he could speak again, someone else entered the room. Sarah Richards, head of housekeeping. Blazer sharp, clipboard in hand, always walking too fast for her own shadow to catch up. What's going on here? She asked, eyes darting between Zoe and the owner. She answered a guest call, Coleman said. In Dutch. Sarah's expression twisted. Oh, that's not in protocol. Housekeeping isn't permitted to engage at the desk, sir. I see, Coleman said, still watching Zoe. But she handled it. Yes, well, We'll review that internally, Sarah said quickly, ushering Zoe away with a glare. Come with me. Zoe followed. No words were exchanged in the service elevator, but the air between them was heavy, hot. Back in the service hallway, Sarah shut the door behind them and leaned in. You think you're special because you speak some foreign languages? She hissed. You think you're better than the others? Zoe said nothing. No more lobby assignments, effective immediately. You're reassigned to conference-level sanitation, toilets, no breaks between events. It wasn't a demotion, technically, but everyone knew that floor was punishment. Zoe nodded once. Understood. She walked back to her locker, slipped off her gloves, and stared at the folded copy of her Georgetown diploma she kept tucked in her coat lining. The ink hadn't faded. The paper hadn't torn. But the world had forgotten how to read it. That night, she went home to her one-room apartment in Queens. Heat barely worked, but it was hers. She made rice, fed the cat next door when Mrs. Castillo texted. Then she sat by her window, holding her resume, 6 copies, all clean, all ignored. She'd applied to internal roles at Grand Plaza's translation services 3 times. No reply. Not even a rejection. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost let it ring. Instead, she picked up. Miss Johnson? A man's voice, professional, polite. Yes? This is Thomas from Grand Plaza's executive office. Mr. Coleman would like to meet with you tomorrow morning. 8 sharp, conference room 5A. Is that possible? She swallowed hard. Yes, she whispered. It's possible. She hung up and sat frozen in her chair. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like the breath before something changes. At exactly 7:55 a.m., Zoe stood outside conference room 5A on the executive floor. The carpet was thicker here, the air colder, conditioned, expensive. She wore the cleanest uniform she owned, her shoes polished until they gleamed. No makeup, just herself, undisguised and undeniably present. The receptionist looked up, startled. Are you with catering? No, Zoe said. I'm here to see Mr. Coleman. Before another question could be asked, the glass door swung open. Miss Johnson? Came a voice behind it. Richard Coleman, tailored in navy, gestured her inside. Thank you for coming. The room was brighter than she expected. Sleek chairs, a whiteboard, coffee station untouched in the corner. Zoe stepped in and stood. Please, he said, motioning to a chair. Sit. This isn't disciplinary. She hesitated, then obeyed. He sat across from her, hands clasped. So, you speak Dutch? Zoe nodded. Dutch, French, Spanish, intermediate German, some Yoruba. And you have a degree from Georgetown? Yes, linguistics and global studies, honors. He blinked. And yet you're here, cleaning. Zoe kept her expression still. Because no one read my resume, Mr. Coleman. Or if they did, they didn't care. The honesty landed hard. He didn't flinch. I'd like to offer you a temporary position, he said. A language liaison for the International Logistics Conference we're hosting next week. It's a 2-week assignment. You'll be assisting VIPs, translating materials, ensuring cultural accuracy. She blinked. And I'd be paid? $5,000 per week, plus per diem, and no scrubbing toilets. Zoe stared, not because it sounded fake, but because it sounded impossible. Why me? She asked. Because yesterday, you took a call that wasn't yours and prevented a logistics disaster before it began. And you did it fluently, politely, and with knowledge our own staff couldn't match. Zoe looked down at her hands. Then you're the first person here to see me. That made him smile, but only slightly. Well, let's fix that. He handed her a slim folder. Welcome to the team, Miss Johnson. Orientation starts this afternoon. Don't be late. Word traveled fast. By the time Zoe returned to the housekeeping floor to collect her things, people stared. Sarah Richards was waiting. You think one lucky phone call changes your job? She hissed. Zoe didn't flinch. One phone call didn't change anything. My skills did. You don't belong in that conference room. Zoe tilted her head. I have a degree, years of language experience, and a record of showing up on time. What exactly makes you think you belong there more than I do? Sarah's jaw clenched. Watch your tone. Zoe smiled, just a little. I've been watching everything for 6 years. It's time someone else did too. At orientation, Zoe met Lila Williams, a mid-level HR coordinator assigned to help onboard new roles. Lila had sharp eyes and a quiet kindness. I read your resume last night, Lila said, walking her to a side office. And then I did something I shouldn't have. What's that? I checked the internal system. You applied for 4 positions over the past 2 years, all related to language or cultural services. Zoe nodded. And? They were marked as not reviewed, every one of them. Zoe's stomach turned. Lila hesitated. Some departments auto-filter resumes from housekeeping staff. Unofficially. It's not policy, but it's practice, Zoe said flatly. Lila nodded. It shouldn't be. By day 3, Zoe was fluent in the conference schedule, formatting materials, and correcting translation documents. That's when she noticed something strange. The translated Dutch brochure for the opening keynote had major errors, tense mismatches, incorrect idioms, even a critical mistranslation about a customs law. She marched into the prep room with the copy. This could tank the whole segment, she told Lila. Who translated these? Lila looked sheepish. Melissa Whitmore, director's niece. She said she minored in Dutch. Zoe shook her head. She used Google Translate. This isn't even passable. Can you fix it? I already did. Zoe handed her a new version, annotated and corrected. Lila stared. I'll take this to Mr. Coleman. That night, Coleman called her into his office again. You saved us millions in credibility, he said, setting down the 2 versions. Do you know how many deals fall through over 1 word in the wrong place? Yes, sir, she said. I studied this. He nodded slowly. You should be doing more than this conference, and I think you know it. The next morning, Zoe was walking a Dutch executive to the elevator when he stopped. You're Zoe Johnson? He asked, switching to Dutch. Yes. He smiled. Are you the same Zoe Johnson who published a paper on post-colonial dialect shifts in Dutch West Africa? Her heart jumped. Yes, that was me. We cited you last month at the UN Linguistics Forum. Incredible work. She flushed. My thank you. He turned to his assistant. Please note her name. We should keep in touch. For the first time in years, Zoe felt seen not just as a worker, but as a scholar. By the end of the conference, she'd corrected over 200 translation errors, facilitated live negotiations in 4 languages, and personally helped close a logistics deal that had stalled for 3 quarters. Coleman asked to see her. I owe you more than just thanks, he said. You've made this conference a success. He pushed forward a folder. Inside, a full-time offer. Director of Multilingual Communications. Salary, office, title. Zoe's hands trembled. You're serious? I've never been more. But before the ink dried, Zoe handed him another file. What's this? Documentation of resume filters, of hiring discrimination. I spoke to several employees. It's systemic. He looked through the pages, his brow darkening. You're saying we've overlooked internal talent for years. I'm saying we've buried it, she said, and it's costing more than you realize. Coleman leaned back. You saved the conference. Now you're trying to save the system? She met his gaze. Someone has to. The fallout came fast. Melissa Whitmore was quietly reassigned. Sarah Richards resigned before a formal investigation could begin. But the biggest change? Zoe's name appeared on the executive directory that Monday. No fanfare, just quiet permanence. And a new sign posted near the HR wing. Talent doesn't wear a uniform. It speaks every language. By the end of her first month as Director of Multilingual Communications, Zoe Johnson had 3 things she'd never had before. A nameplate on her door, a direct line to the CEO, and a voice in the company newsletter. But she didn't use any of them for show. Instead, she used them to launch something that had been forming in her mind since that first day she scrubbed marble floors under chandeliers. A company-wide initiative to identify underutilized talent in overlooked roles. She called it Invisible Talent. Coleman approved the pilot immediately. 3 hotels in the Grand Plaza network. 1 mission: audit internal staff. Not for mistakes, but for hidden degrees, second languages, management experience buried under years of silence. Within 2 weeks, the results staggered the board. A janitor with a degree in mechanical engineering from Brazil, a cafeteria server fluent in Arabic and Spanish, a bellhop with a master's in public policy. All employees, all previously ignored. Zoe's program didn't just lift morale, it saved money. Outsourced translation contracts were canceled. Guest satisfaction improved. Staff turnover dropped, and the media took notice. First came Hotelier Digest, then Forbes Travel Weekly. Zoe Johnson, once a uniform in the background, became the face of operational equity. In one interview, she said, I was always qualified. I just wasn't seen. Talent doesn't scream. It waits to be heard. Some executives clapped politely. Others clenched their teeth. She didn't care. Sarah Richards' former office now belonged to a new HR liaison, Lila Williams. And under her leadership, Zoe expanded Invisible Talent into every corner of the company's U.S. locations. She launched a mentorship ladder for entry-level staff. Employees could shadow departments they aspired to join, attend workshops, submit resumes without filtering by job title. Supervisors had to explain why they rejected candidates, not just click archive. One manager quit in protest. Another stayed, but started listening. Zoe wasn't interested in revenge. She wanted renewal. Then came the ripple effect. A dishwasher named Emilio, who once took English classes on his break, was hired as a bilingual customer rep. A housekeeper from Ghana, Amma, started leading monthly culture talks in 5 languages. One of the executives who'd once dismissed Zoe now worked in a lower regional position. Reassigned after internal audits showed repeated favoritism. He passed her in the hallway once. Couldn't meet her eyes. She didn't need him to, because that morning, she was on her way to a team meeting in the newly renamed Johnson Williams Training Hall. The same place where, a year earlier, her resume had been ignored without a glance. Now it held a banner that read, Every voice matters. Outside the building, a scholarship ceremony was taking place for the children of employees. It was Zoe's latest idea, a fund seeded with company support, but run independently to avoid the politics of boardroom approval. She'd made one condition. First recipient goes to someone who's been invisible the longest. That afternoon, the winner was announced. Daniela Flores, daughter of Marina Flores, a quiet housekeeper who'd worked night shifts for 14 years. Marina cried when she took the mic. Zoe stood to the side, silent, arms crossed over her chest, smiling with her eyes. When the applause died down, Marina's voice came out clear. "My daughter will be a lawyer. I cleaned floors so she could walk halls of justice. Thank you for seeing us." The room went still, then it roared. Later, alone in her office, Zoe looked at the wall, a quote etched into the glass above her door. "You don't have to be important to do important things." She'd written it herself, not for decoration, for remembrance. Because just downstairs, the housekeeping crew was finishing their shift, the same crew she'd been part of. She still greeted them by name, still hugged Amma in the elevator, still thanked the dishwashers who let her test her Spanish during lunch breaks. She wasn't above them. She was with them. One day, a young intern named Malik walked into her office, visibly nervous. "Miss Johnson?" he said. "Zoe," she corrected. He nodded, clutching a notebook. "I wanted to say thank you. My mom works night shifts. Your story, it made her feel proud of herself again. She's applying to a company program now. First time in years." Zoe smiled, took a breath. "You tell her I'm rooting for her." But not everyone was cheering. Late one Thursday, she was summoned to the 17th floor, executive boardroom. Dark wood, high-backed chairs, a view that made the city look like a toy model. Sitting at the head was Eleanor Craig, a legacy board member from the old school. Steel-eyed, no nonsense. "I wanted to discuss your initiative," Eleanor said, flipping a folder closed. "It's disruptive." Zoe met her gaze. Change usually is. "It's creating waves. People are nervous. Hierarchies exist for a reason. So do blind spots." Eleanor narrowed her eyes. "You bypassed traditional processes, elevated people without proper degrees." Zoe leaned forward. "You mean without expected degrees? They're qualified. The data proves it. And if it backfires? Then I'll own it. But I won't ignore it." Eleanor tapped a pen against the table. "You're very confident for someone who once cleaned toilets." Zoe didn't blink. And yet, here we are. Same table. Eleanor paused, then, unexpectedly, nodded. "Well, let's see if you're right." By the end of the quarter, the board voted 6-2 in favor of expanding invisible talent globally. Zoe didn't celebrate with champagne. She spent the night with Lila and Amma, sorting mentorship applications by hand, giggling over handwritten essays and broken but beautiful grammar. She called her old linguistics professor from Georgetown just to say, "I finally used the theory in real life." He laughed. "I always knew you would." Months later, at the International Hotelier Summit in Amsterdam, Zoe delivered the keynote speech. She walked to the podium in a simple suit. No frills, no flash. "I was once told I didn't belong at the front desk," she said, her voice carrying across the ornate hall. "But the front desk isn't the pinnacle. It's the entrance." She paused. "And everyone deserves the chance to walk through it." She finished her speech in Dutch, not for effect, but for connection. Afterward, a young black woman approached her in tears. "I work room service in Brussels," she whispered. "I speak 5 languages. I never thought anyone like me." Zoe took her hand. "You're already ready," she said. They just have to see it. Final scene. Back in New York, Zoe stood outside the HR office. In her hand, a thick envelope. Inside, a full scholarship offer for Daniela Flores, who would now attend NYU Law on a full ride. Zoe handed it to Marina personally. "No cameras," she said. "No speech. Just this." Marina opened it and for a moment said nothing. Then she pulled Zoe into a hug that spoke 1,000 silent thank yous. As Zoe walked away, the lobby was quiet. The marble floor gleamed. A younger housekeeper was scrubbing a corner. Zoe stopped, kneeled, and said quietly, "You're doing a great job." The woman looked up, shocked, then nodded, smiling. In that moment, Zoe Johnson wasn't a symbol. She was just someone who remembered. Because real change doesn't just start with a voice. It starts when the voice keeps listening.